we don't know what's going on. There's a lot of stuff happening. We haven't really paid attention to the Korea problem for a long time. And all of a sudden it's flaring up again.
We've been a little busy in the desert.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden I'm one of like 5 SEALs. I don't think it's about like 4 SEALs that are permanently stationed in Korea. And so I had all kinds of people ask me questions. I had 6 months of lead up time relative to them. And so it was really cool getting to interact with a lot of these 3-letter agencies, working directly with the admirals and generals. I was working for the Navy admiral, but I was also liaising with the SOCOM, or the Special Operations Command Korea general. And so it was a cool experience for a lieutenant to have all these people asking questions and wanting to help support them. But after the Olympics, and they had at that point they'd already had Trump met with KJU. They had the Olympics where they kind of smoothed things over because the Olympics that year were in Korea, and so they wanted to have a peaceful celebration of sports and stuff. After the Olympics, it just went quiet, and the job satisfaction out there went down. I still had a great time hanging out with the Korean SEALs. I had great relationships with them. But as far as seeing what the upper echelon officer's role was, it didn't excite me. And so I was no longer really operational as a SEAL at that point. The platoon time had already passed. And so I was seeing what these commanders and captains and admirals and generals were doing. And it was like, this isn't what I want. I don't want to try and force this just to eke out a 20-year career and get a retirement. I'm not doing this for the money.
Welcome to the Transition Drill Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pantiani. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. So let's get into this. It'll get there.
It's always a work in progress with these things.
Oh, man. How's jiu-jitsu?
It was great. I've had a lot of fun doing it, especially now that I've gotten to the point where with CrossFit and stuff like that, I'm not really trying to compete anymore. And so the fitness level there, it's good to have, the drive to want to push yourself more. But I mean, when you don't have that competition edge, like what am I training for? And so having jiu-jitsu now gives me that purpose again with the workouts. Like, all right, I'm training for jiu-jitsu, I'm training for surfing, I'm training for all these random trips that we go on. Like we were given a month's notice to hike the Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim. It's between 50 and 60 miles, but our friends were like, hey, we had some people back out.
Have you pull that mic just a little bit closer to you?
We had some friends pull out last minute, and we don't know many people that can just go for a 50-mile hike, my wife and I, on short notice, and do it Monday through Thursday, which is another benefit of being an entrepreneur and owning your own company.
That was going to be my question, was what's the time frame for doing that 60-mile hike?
So we had 3 nights, 4 days, because you had to get permits because you're staying inside the national park. And so they only allow so many people to stay at each of the campsites. So we went from, I always forget the name of it. It's like Angel Bright's on one side and maybe just South Fork. But you go down to Phantom Ranch, which is where the mules take the mail up and down. And then we hiked across the floor of the valley to Cottonwood Creek, stayed there overnight. And then we did the North Rim and back to Cottonwood Creek. And then the third day was the easiest. You was just hiking along the valley floor back to Phantom Ranch. And then the last day was the hike out.
Dedicated trails, though, I'm assuming. You're not forging your own trails.
No. So having the ability to do stuff like that just makes life more fun and entertaining when you can get those random invites to do crazy stuff.
and being able to physically do it.
Yeah, we didn't do a single shakeout hike. We had these old packs that my wife's dad and brother used when he was a Boy Scout. I think they used them once. We're like, I hope they work. Throw the stuff on. Let's just start going. Everyone has these like fancy ultra light, they're down to the ounce in total weight. We're like, I don't know. These things are, they're like LL Bean or something.
They could be used as a litter if you need to
for sure.
haul somebody out.
Super durable.
Are you training as far as your jiu-jitsu? Are you training for any competitions, or you just do it to keep yourself in shape?
I was going to do one competition. So I've been doing it for about 3 years. I was on and off about wanting to actually do a competition, or if I was just going to do it for the fun of it. My wife has done one. She absolutely killed it. She tapped out both girls. And I was going to do one following her. And then like the week before, I was training with some people, and I was going against a guy I'd never gone before. Apparently he's a black belt from Brazil. And we've been training for like 2 hours at that point. Like, yeah, cool. We'll just do an easy roll. Immediately puts me into like a triangle, and then arm bars me, and my elbow popped. I was like, oh, cool. Probably not going to do the competition now. So that just healed. And then 3 weeks ago, I popped a rib. So there's just continual stuff. It's the fun of pain.
Welcome to jiu-jitsu and getting old.
Yeah, pretty much. But like, I still love it. I'm out there. I just did a double day today, and even with the rib, I'm like, I don't care. It's not doing anything worse to it. It's kind of teach myself to slow down and focus on different techniques instead of just going through like the explosive maneuvers.
Do you have combatives or martial arts training prior to ever going when you went into the military?
Before the military, no. I started when I was in the Marine Corps. I was doing the MCMAP program. Really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun learning to grapple and roll. It's a weird hodgepodge of jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, judo, Krav Maga, boxing, like literally everything. They just kind of put it all together because it's designed for guys to be wearing full kit, to have a weapon, to have a helmet, to be with buddies. So you're not really there doing, no-gi style, very explosive, very maneuverable, dynamic stuff. You have the advantage that you have all this gear on. So, me at 185 pounds with all my gear on, I was probably pushing 250 to 280, depending on what we were doing. So that's a lot of weight I can put on somebody. Plus it's a lot of like rigid stuff, the magazines, the radios, the plates. That would be very uncomfortable to be dragging across someone's face. But I'm also significantly hindered in how well I can move. The plates are going from here to here, so I can't really do a sit-up. So if I get stuck on my back, I'm like a turtle just rolling around. So yeah, you have to kind of figure out what works, what doesn't. So I started there, got into it, and became an instructor right before I left the Marine Corps, and then went to the SEAL teams. At the end of SEAL training, the pipeline before you graduate, they have a combative section. But that one's more... They don't want to teach you to be an MMA fighter. Like that's not the point of being a SEAL. If you're going into a room, getting into a grappling match, something's seriously wrong because A, you're not with a buddy. So why are you alone? B, where's your weapon? C, it's just a bad situation if you're on the ground rolling around with somebody. So what they're trying to teach you is one, what it feels like to get punched. If some guys are coming in straight out of high school and they've never been in a fight before, it's good to know what it feels like to get punched in the face. Teach you basic balance and movement, so you don't cross your legs. You know how to throw a punch if you have to, and learning to control your body. And then most importantly, probably prisoner handling. If you have somebody, learning how to manipulate them, control them in case they're unruly, or if you're transporting them someplace, you know how to hold them. So if they decide to get squirrely, you have a good grip on them. It's not going to become a liability.
Yeah, because when you're in full kit and you're moving through a building, clearing it, the last thing you want to be doing is going hands-on.
Yeah.
Like you said, something's gone definitely wrong with that scenario if you're in a hand-to-hand with the person.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. I mean, if nothing else, have a knife on you. Like there's no reason I'd be putting somebody into an arm bar unless, that's somebody we're supposed to be taking out and we're supposed to have them alive at all costs. But I've never been on one of those, so I've never had that situation where it's like, all right, this is what we might have to do.
Well, before we go too far forward, let's take it backwards a little bit. Tell me about where hometown is. Where'd you grow up?
California, native. A little bit of all over though. So my dad's from Southern California, my mom's from Northern California. I was born in LA, grew up in the Bay Area, and then went to school on the East Coast and came back to San Diego in 2009. And other than a 2-year stint in Korea and deployments, I've been in San Diego for my entire military career and then stayed there after. So a little bit of all over San Diego or California, so LA, Bay Area, San Diego. I just call it all home.
When you said you went to school on the East Coast, was that part of the military or while you were in just your regular schooling process as a young kid?
Yes. So I went to the Naval Academy for college.
Okay.
Did 4 years there and then did a year in Quantico with the Marines, going through TBS. And then I was a communication officer. That school was there in Quantico as well. And then drove out to San Diego in 2009.
What'd your mom and dad do?
My mom's a marine biologist. She runs a nonprofit teaching kids about the marine life in the San Francisco Bay. And my dad's an ophthalmologist.
Is that what took your family up to the Bay Area? Was your mom's work?
My dad's. My mom's from there.
Okay.
So her whole family's from the East Bay Area, Sacramento, Rye Island type stuff. My parents met at Stanford, and then he just loved it. So he went through his medical training up there and just stayed.
Big family, brothers, sisters?
One brother, one sister. So not huge, 5 of us. Got a bunch of cousins, and we've all been real close. So, my grandparents still lived in the Sacramento area, so we'd always be up there. There's 15 cousins, 5. My mom was one of 5.
Oh, wow.
So there's 4 of their aunts and uncles plus their spouses. So family events were always fun. My grandparents made sure that
Fighting for a seat?
Oh, yeah. There's definitely the kids' table, and it was the fun table.
Amongst you and your brothers and sisters, where do you fall? Are you the oldest, youngest? Middle.
Oh, yeah. The independent middle one. I'm the only one that left the Bay Area. My sister's still in San Francisco. My brother's in San Mateo. My brother went to college for a few years in Santa Barbara, but that's about it. They've all just stayed up there.
Is your sister optimistic about the future of San Francisco, or is she looking to get out?
No, she just sent me an article that said if you are a single person making under $104,000 a year, you're below the poverty line, or you're low income, or something like that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how far off the rails San Francisco's gotten. I heard recently now people are parking their cars, they just roll their windows down, they pop their trunk. It's like, please don't destroy my car. There's nothing in here.
Yeah, don't break my windows. Take whatever you want. Have the radio.
Yeah,
it's fine. My favorite story though is the poop app. There's the app that would pinpoint where homeless people have been shitting on the streets, so you can avoid it.
Is it kind of like Waze where people mark, hey, there's a road hazard coming up?
Here's a way around, detour. But yeah, people are paying $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 for these small apartment condos, and there's literally people shooting up in like not inside the building, but right out front.
Right.
It's weird up there right now. It's such a weird dynamic between the politics and the people. Like the mayor up there is actually doing a pretty good job of keeping that middle ground, but it's just become such a homogenous culture where everything is tech and everything is very liberal. I feel like it just turned into the echo chamber. You know, just like that South Park episode, the smug one where they're all sniffing each other's farts, driving Priuses. I mean, that literally took place in San Francisco. I'm like, that's 100% what San Francisco has become. Everyone, I mean, it's so expensive. Everyone's in the same tech industry or finance industry stuff. Both Seattle and San Francisco, they're like dead cities. They're all the fun, eclectic, interesting people can't afford to live there. So all you have are these .com people and the finance people, the super wealthy, and they just cost so much to live there that you don't really have that typical city feel anymore.
Right. It's a shame because it's a great city.
It's beautiful.
I mean,
absolutely beautiful.
I tell people, if you like New York City, go to San Francisco because it's the West Coast closest thing I think to New York City.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame that it and maybe it's partly driven by the media because I can't imagine it's completely overrun with homeless. It's always had a problem. It's just continuing to get worse. And
the repercussions for the illegal activities that a lot of them would do are just not there. Like I mean, you're a police officer. You know the threshold for the district attorneys and stuff like that to actually prosecute. It's become such a high level that people are literally walking into stores with backpacks, no mask, no attempt to hide themselves, just throwing food and stuff into their backpacks and walking out. And it's become such a litigious environment that none of the staff are going to do anything. A, they don't want to get hurt. They're like, it's not my store. But B, if you try and tackle somebody and they get hurt, that person, even though they were stealing stuff, they can now sue that store and that store will be liable. So there's They're telling their employees, don't stop them, film them, try and get information, but don't do anything else. Just let it happen. And then the people are being, caught and released without bail and no court date. Or if there is a court date, they're not showing up because it's such a low level crime now.
And what's sad is people will say, oh, we'll just leave, move to some place. But for some people, if your work and your life is in a given geographic area, it's not easy just to uproot your family and go, okay, we're going to move.
Yeah. Especially something like Silicon Valley, where it used to be closer to San Jose, where it was more like the southern end of the peninsula. It is now the entire Bay Area. Like everything is sprawled out. People are commuting from Contra Costa County, so way East Bay, an hour and a half into the city, into the South Bay area for work, because it's just so ridiculously expensive there.
Right.
They need to find something to buy, and there's like, well, I'll just commute 2 hours on BART to get into work.
And then you start thinking about, what impact is that having on your overall health and your wellness and your life and your family's life? So we could sit here and make this podcast episode completely about that.
Just talking about the Bay Area, what's in its demise.
And hopefully it comes back. I really do. I really hope for the best, but now it's just a matter of waiting and seeing. For you as a kid growing up in the Bay Area, what kind of took up your time?
Sports, a lot of sports. So I was a water polo player. I was a soccer player. I was a swimmer. I tried football my freshman year of high school. I did not have the genetic gift of early height and weight. I think my freshman year of high school, I was like 135 pounds and I was 5'8". So
perfect football player.
Oh, great. Yeah. Signed up for tight end. I'm like, this seems like a great spot. I did 1 year of it. Just wanted to give it a try. But I was like, this is not going to do well. And so I got back into water polo. Going from water polo to soccer was always a pain though, because I'd gone from the year before, so swimming, summer water polo, and then so I just done 9 months of swimming, and then I'd go to running. As I'm going through those growth years, it was like shin splint central. And my soccer coach, he was one of those guys like fitness first. We wouldn't even touch a soccer ball for the first month. It was just running, timed runs, conditioning runs, sprints. I would spend a lot of time with the trainers getting taped up, doing ice plunges and all that stuff to relieve some of the strain in the shins. It was tough.
Back then, and maybe even still today, for water polo players, because I never played it, was there no cross training type component outside the water that was stressed?
Not really. Weight training really wasn't much of a thing. The football players did it, maybe the basketball players, but I remember we had a gym in my high school, but it was definitely not a thing we did. It was all just swimming, maybe some push-ups and sit-ups and stuff like that. But I don't think the weight training knowledge and understanding of the benefits of doing the cross-training stuff was really prevalent in the 90s and early 2000s. CrossFit did a lot to help spread the knowledge on the benefits of doing weight training, especially for growing boys, to build up that muscle density, to build up that bone density, to help with the range of motion and stuff like that, and just having something other than constantly swimming to train.
I was just thinking from a coaching perspective, like, hey guys, we're going to get out of the water today. We're going to go do a 6 mile run, to work on cardio. I mean, obviously,
you ever see swimmers run?
I was gonna.
It's embarrassing. I was one of the few that could do it, but yeah, watching swimmers run is like watching weightlifters ride a bike. Like, it's the most uncoordinated group of people getting them out of the water.
Academics, obviously, you went to the military academy, so your academics were strong.
They're okay. It took me an extra year to get in, so I graduated high school, applied to the Naval Academy. Didn't get it my first year. I was fortunate that I found out about an interim program called Northwestern Prep School that worked with Air Force, Military Academy, and Naval Academy people trying to get into one of the service academies, and for whatever reason, they didn't get in the first year. So you go there, study up, improve your SAT scores, essentially get a semester of college credits in, and then you go back and apply. And I got it. So I graduated high school in 2003 and went to the Naval Academy in 2004.
And at what point in your life does not only just the military, but to that level of the military kind of start becoming important to you?
What do you mean?
So when did you decide you wanted to go to the military academy? As opposed to simply enlisting?
Yeah, my uncle went to the Naval Academy, and so I didn't know a lot about it. And honestly, the difference between officers and enlisted, I really didn't understand that much either. I talked with him about it a little bit. He graduated in 67, I think. It's either 67 or 69, and went submarines, did that for about 8 years. And because his family was starting to grow, he didn't want to be gone that much. You know, submarine life it's pretty regular rotations, but they're gone a lot. When, especially in the 70s, you know, they didn't have the Cold War. Yeah, they didn't have the internet like they do now. So it's pretty much when they're gone, there's no communication back home to the family. They might get the occasional mail drop, but especially if they're on boomers, those things go and they're gone for that 6-month rotation. They're literally just making squares in the middle of the ocean. Their entire purpose is to remain hidden so that if there is a nuclear strike, that option's available. And so, yeah, he was just gone from what I understood. And so I never actually knew him when he was in the military. Both my grandfathers served in some capacity. One was a merchant marine captain during World War II, driving the Liberty ships, carrying all the cargo back and forth from the U.S. to either England or the Pacific Front. And then my other grandfather was a medical officer during the Korean War, served on the Mercy. So I had some knowledge of the military. There was presence. And my uncle served in Vietnam. He did a tour as a helicopter pilot. So there's stuff around that I saw, but it wasn't like I had not really close, direct experience, like where they were still serving or anything like that. It was more of, it seemed like a fun thing to do until my cousin joined and his best friend became a SEAL and started coming to a lot of family events. My cousin was about 9 years older than me. His friend started coming because he didn't have much of a family life. So at 12 years old, meeting a SEAL, hearing his stories, I'm like, this is the coolest thing I could possibly imagine. And that was it. Like, I just never found anything better or more interesting that I wanted to do. And when my parents mentioned the idea of, hey, you can go to the Naval Academy, Navy SEALs are part of that, so you can go that route. Like, yeah, sure, that seems good. You know, get your college paid for, go become a SEAL after that. Let's do that. And I really didn't truly understand at the time, you know, as I said, officer enlisted, best paths for getting to the SEAL community. And it just, you know, real deep understanding of what the military was. It just seemed like a really cool job to have.
Almost seems like your parents kind of took their route of, okay, hey, you want to go be a SEAL, but let's get you some college behind it as opposed to just go enlist. Mm-hmm. So the driving force was to get your college education at minimum, mm-hmm. and then serve behind that. Yeah, and you know, it is nice if you can get in there. You don't have college loans or anything, so, and you have a guaranteed job when you get out, which was nice. So I graduated 2008, right at the start of the financial crisis. And for me, honestly, that crisis never really existed because the war was going on. So I didn't get SEALs right away. I went Action Marine Corps for 4 years. So I was serving as a Marine, doing deployments, doing training trips. I had a guaranteed job for 5 years. So that brings me to 2013. And it was just like, yeah, I'm still getting a paycheck. I have a fun job. It's exciting. I would hear about the financial crisis, but it wasn't a concern for me. And I was so focused on deployments that it was just kind of like this thing going off in the background. As a young man now going out of high school, did you go to public or private? Public. So going from kind of a looser environment to military life, especially in the Naval Academy, how was that transition for you? I actually really enjoyed that structure. It's probably good for me, honestly. As I said, my academic track record wasn't bad, but I was definitely not some stellar student. Right. I was more of a well-rounded jack of all trades type person. And honestly, the school environment is something that doesn't mesh well with me. I know a lot of guys similar to me that it's just, you know, you're putting a teenage boy into a classroom told to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day and you know, focus on homework and books and stuff.
I enjoy reading now because I do it on my own time. But at the time, I absolutely hated doing the readings that they had. Some of the books, I'm like, this book doesn't make sense. Reading the Odyssey and the Iliad and Shakespeare, it would take me so long to read them. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. It's just, I glaze over when I do it. And so it wasn't fun for me. There's certain subject I enjoyed, but for the large part, school was something I had to really focus on doing. There was a lot of other things that came much more naturally to me. And so I had to have that structure, I think, to successfully get through college. I don't know for sure. I didn't go another route, but
Right.
I think that really helped keep me in line. It was frustrating at times. You're giving up a lot of your independence and your freedom going to the Naval Academy. But being told you have to go to class, you will graduate in 4 years. There is no 5-year option. You have academic standards or you'll get kicked out. And if you don't do well, then you're not going to get your first choice job. So there is direct correlation where, you can be top of your class in whatever university, but it doesn't mean you're going to get a job on the way out. At least the Naval Academy, hey, if you're top of your class, you're going to probably get your first pick in at service selection.
And I know the limited knowledge that I have of it, there's only a certain number of SEAL positions that are offered to Academy graduates. What's the process? Is it simply like, hey, you just put your name in and hope you get selected, or is it based on performance?
It's based on a lot of stuff. So the way they do it, your senior year, at the very beginning of the year, you put in your wish list. So from the Naval Academy, you can go serve on ships, submarines, be a pilot, be a SEAL, EOD, or choose Marines. And with the Marine track, you can either put in for Marine Air or Marine Ground, but that's the only distinction, because the Marine Corps, they'll have you go to TBS, and from there you'll do your service selection, whether you go infantry, tanks, comms, intel, whatever, all the other gambit of things. The only people that can go supply and intel in the Navy from the Naval Academy are people that have medical waivers, colorblind, flat foot, something like that, where you can't be an unrestricted line officer. Everyone else has to be a unrestricted line officer, meaning, ships, submarines, pilots, stuff like that. So yeah, beginning of your senior year, you put in your wish list. You rank all those from number 1 to number 7 or whatever it is. And certain ones will have actual interviews, like for the very high end selective ones, like EOD, SEALs. And if you want to do the aviation track, you have to pass the ASTB, which is the Aviation Standard Test Battery. It's a test you're only allowed to take, I think, 3 times, and you have to get above a certain score for pilot and for NFO, which is the guy sitting in the back like Goose. And so you have to get a certain score for each of those to be qualified. And if you're not qualified, you can't even put it in your list of options. And so right before Thanksgiving, they come out with service selection, and everyone finds out what it is they're going to be doing when they graduate. So it's right before the end of the first semester. And then for the second semester, you'll go to a leadership class in your selected community. So I got selected for Marine Corps. We did Marine Corps focused training. If you're a pilot, they actually send you out to get your ground training and your private pilot's license so that you can start your flight training a little bit faster when you graduate. The ship people, they go out and do navigation and other ship type work. And so you get a little bit of specialized training in the track you're going to be going into right before graduation.
With each year, is it the same number of available spots for like SEAL spots? Is it always 10, or is it a sliding scale based on what's needed? Yeah,
it's always needs in the military. And so it's never perfect because they have to forecast it so many years out. For the Naval Academy, they select people, the number of people for the class based off of the anticipated needs of the Navy and the Marine Corps. Our class, I think, was 1,200, 1,300, something like that. When we started, we graduated just over 1,000, because there's always people that either don't want to do it, they get kicked out, or that's it. So you either quit or you get kicked out for some reason. Up through the start of your junior year, you can leave. No questions asked. You don't have to owe anything. After your junior year, you sign what they call a 2 for 7, which is you'll serve 2 more years and you will have to do 7 years total, including those 2 years. So you have to serve 5 years out, unless you're a specific community like pilots. They have to serve, I think, 8 years past, if they're a fixed wing pilot, 8 years past when they get their wings. And I think helicopter pilots are 6 years after they get their wings. So there's certain communities where they have to owe a little bit more, but the minimum for the Naval Academy is you have to serve 5 years after. And if you quit or get kicked out after you sign that form, then you have to either pay back or go serve as enlisted to pay back your time.
During the time you were there, never kind of wavered on what you might want to do? Did ever, like being a pilot or anything like that, ever kind of creep onto your radar?
Not really. I did take the ASCB more out of curiosity than anything else. Like, I wonder what this test is, and I got the minimum score needed to become a pilot. So it's one of those, it's more of a check in the box than anything else. Like, if you get a perfect score versus if you get the minimum score, it doesn't help you at all. It's just, did you get the minimum? Cool. Now
did you pass?
Yeah, you can go to flight school. And so I did take it one day. I was leaving class and I saw that people were lined up. I'm like, what are you guys all waiting in line for? They said it was a test. Yeah, sure, I'll go do it.
Got nothing else to do.
Let's give it a whirl. And so I did have that option. And actually, when I found out I didn't get SEALs and I was going Marine Corps, I did have the option to put in for Marine Aviation, and I could have just been like, yep, I want it, and they would have put me in that track. But I was still interested in either getting back to the SEALs or at that point, MARSOC had just opened up. It had just become a thing a couple of years before. So like, yeah, I can either try and go back SEALs or go to MARSOC. I'm going to stay true to that original path of trying to get into special operations.
So MARSOC is a choice out of the academy, or simply Marine ground forces, and then once you're there, try to get to MARSOC?
Yeah, so for MARSOC, it would be go Marine ground, get picked up for, at the time you would have had to go on infantry or some kind of combat arm. So infantry, artillery, tracks, recon type stuff. And then after you finish your platoon commander time, you can apply to go to ANS, the assessment and selection. Sorry. And if you make it through that, then you can go through the MARSOC pipeline.
So simply coming out of the academy, you knew you were going Marine Corps ground. Mm-hmm. And then from there,
that's it.
And you're now out of the academy. Your first assignment or duty station was where?
TBS, which in the very creative side of the Marine Corps is the basic school. But it's a very tradition heavy course. So the Marine Corps, everyone's heard the montage of every Marine a rifleman. So every Marine officer is a provisional rifle platoon commander. No matter what your job is, if you're a pilot, supply, logistics, communications, everybody knows the basics of leading a rifle platoon. And so that's what TBS is. And it goes through all the levels of leadership. So you start off doing fire team work, and then you do squad work, and then you do platoon work. And then you go on to like urban combat stuff. They've started to add some more features to it. But honestly, TBS is a really good time. If you look beyond, everyone being nervous and trying to be leaders among leaders, a bunch of second lieutenants running around trying to lead each other. It's kind of humorous. But if you just look at what the cool things you're getting to do, like you're running around basically playing Boy Scout, you're doing week-long field exercises, you're doing land navigation. We shot pretty much every weapon in the Marine Corps. Like we shot the M4, the M16, we shot the SAW, we shot the 246, we shot grenade launchers, we shot the SMA, we shot artillery. You have radios, you're going out doing small unit tactics and stuff. It's just a kind of good time to be out there doing fun stuff in the woods of Quantico. Like it's miserable sometimes, it's Quantico, which you get the swampy summers and then the really cold winters. So if it can be, there's that, the human factors side of it that can be miserable, but you're getting out there having fun with people that are all wanting to be there.
Nobody comes out of Quantico going, this is where I want to live later on in life.
Most people know. It's
Get me away from this area.
I mean, there's a reason why they originally made DC where it is. I mean, Quantico is just outside of DC. It's literally a swamp that they've just made much more enjoyable to live. But back in the day, they wanted it to be miserable because they didn't want politicians to just congregate there and want to be around. They're like, no, go back home, go be that, the civilian political leader and actually give back to society. It's obviously changed in the 200 something years that we've been around. But yeah, the Mid-Atlantic it can be rough.
Coming out of TBS, what were you assigned to?
I got communication officer. So not my first choice by any stretch of the imagination, not even my top three. The way the Marine Corps does it is every TBS class gets broken up into thirds, and they call it quality spread. The Marine Corps doesn't want all their top people going to the highly coveted jobs and all the bottom of the class people go into the ones that nobody wants. So they spread load the talent throughout all the communities, which is just smart. It's all about the success of the service, the individual that comes much, much lower tier in the Marine Corps' priorities. So if, let's say there's a class of 300, they'll break them up into groups of 100, and with few exceptions of the significantly limited spots like tanks and amphibious track vehicles where there's only like 1 or 2 billets each, they'll break them up evenly. So if there's 30 infantry billets, they'll put 10 in each third. Supply, they'll do however many across each third. And then throughout the entire TBS pipeline, you get ranked on academics, on small unit leadership, on peer reviews, and on the cadre reviews. And I think physical was in there too. And so you get the score that ranks you and puts you from 1 to 300. And then based off of your placement, they'll give people their first, second, third, fourth, fifth choices. And I was like I don't remember how many people in my class. It wasn't 300. We had a smaller group, but in the scenario of 300 people, I was like number 102. Or sorry, I was like number 99. So I was at the very bottom of the top third. So if I had actually done a little bit worse in TBS, I would have had a better selection opportunity. But it is what it is. And so I got communication officer from there, and then went into a 6-month follow-on school learning about radio, satellites, computers, networks, telephone switching stuff. Totally in line with everything a SEAL wants to be doing. So it was a struggle for me to accept that for a while.
You were building the ancillary skill set.
Exactly. Learning about all the other things. But honestly, going Marine Corps, regardless of what my job was probably a healthy thing for me to do for a while, because I've been so focused on being a SEAL since I was 12 years old, and then throughout the Naval Academy, and all of a sudden that's not what I'm going to be doing anymore. So having some other exposure to something outside of just that small community of 2,500 SEALs, learning about an entire new service, and the Marine Corps is very good at doing things like planning and leadership and coordination. They're very nitpicky about those things. The 5-paragraph order they live and die by with everything. Where in the Navy, they use it, but it's more of a structured thing, where the Marine Corps is like, this is how we do everything. I don't care if you're doing a movement of 5 Humvees from one side of the base to the other, or you're doing a full-scale operation across Iraq. Like, they use the 5-paragraph order. And so I got a ton of exposure to that, learning to lead Marines, learning to work in an area outside of my specialty. It was all just good, humbling, and eye-opening experiences for me. And so when I put in for special operations, I put in both for a SEAL package and for MARSOC. Unfortunately, MARSOC becomes so popular within the Marine Corps, and they just opened it up, that it was like a 1.5 year wait just to go to A&S to see if they would accept me to go to the training, which like their follow-on training would be the equivalent of, BUDS and SQT. And so I applied first time to BUDS, didn't get it. 6 months later, applied again and got it. So it was just shy of 4 years in the Marine Corps that I transferred back over to the Navy.
Did you ever combat deploy while you were in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, I did one deployment to Afghanistan, and I would have done a second, but they didn't know how long it was going to take for the Marine Corps, the Navy, to process my stuff. It ended up taking like 8 months to transfer between the services, and my unit deployed again to Afghanistan, but they're like, we don't know if you're going to be leaving, so we don't want to have you out there and then have to send you back.
Is that type of transfer, well, at the officer level, is that type of transfer more common, less common? And is it easier or harder at the officer level?
So the officer level is probably the only level that you can actually do a inter-service transfer.
Okay.
Because the enlisted, you just finish out your contract.
And then go re-enlist.
Re-enlist it in another service. For the officers, there's no end of your contract. You serve until either you leave or the president dismisses you. And so I don't think there's anybody I've seen that transferred as an enlisted, but I have seen a lot of enlisted guys that went from the Marine Corps and then became SEALs.
I've had one other guest who did from the enlisted route. I didn't know that if there was the transfer process was not the same for officer and enlisted.
No, because the enlisted, they have a set duration on their contract, where the officers, it's indefinite.
Putting in the request to now, is it really considered a transfer? And I say this kind of jokingly. Navy and the Marines are basically the same mother and father, just different brothers and sisters.
Yeah, yes,
to a degree.
So they both work for the Secretary of the Navy. That's really the only touch point. They're completely, everything else after that are two separate things. You know, there's the CNO and there's a commandant in the Marine Corps, and they both run their respective services. The only thing that carries over between the two is going to be budgeting level stuff at the Secretary of the Navy level. I
guess what I'm saying, you wouldn't see a Marine officer putting in a transfer to go to the Army.
Oh, you do?
Oh, you do?
Yeah, you see guys. You'll see guys that didn't make it through SEAL training. They'll transfer over to the Army to go through Green Beret or become Rangers. Marines do the same thing.
Oh, okay.
The Marine Corps it's very protective of itself. They don't like having anyone stand out and be different. Like you hear it all the time. No one's special in the Marine Corps. Everyone is the same. Recon itself always had its own issues dealing with the big Marine Corps policy. They were always hurting for funding because there's that fight between conventional infantry and the recon, and they basically worked out an understanding between the two of what one provides in terms of mission set versus the other. And so they became compatible with one another. And then when Donald Rumsfeld said we need to expand soft capabilities during Iraq, the easiest way to do that, instead of trying to make more SEALs or make more Green Berets, is just creating a new soft entity with the Marine Corps. And so they just absorbed pretty much all the Force Recon guys and turned them into Det 1. There's a couple other guys that came from other areas, but the majority of it was absorb Force Recon, turn it into a SOCOM service or a SOCOM unit that SOCOM can control. So that's what makes special operations different, is that they get administrative tasking from their service. So pay, uniforms, orders, all that type of stuff happens from their respective services. But operational tasking happens from SOCOM. So Green Berets, Rangers, SEALs, MARSOC, they get tasked by the 4-star in charge of SOCOM for their mission sets. And so essentially what they did is said, all right, we're just going to take recon from the Marine Corps, put it under SOCOM, and now we have this new entity. When that happened, there was a lot of turmoil within the Marine Corps. I don't know if you've ever read the book, A Few Bad Men. Mm-mm. Just came out recently. He was talking about the Det 1 guys' deployment to Afghanistan, and the terrible situation they ended up in. The summary of the story is they went out there, they got into a firefight. The local population tried saying that these guys were cowboys and just shooting wildly, trying to survive, and killed a bunch of civilians. And assuming that everything from the book is true, and I've heard very credible stuff that it sounds like it was, the Marine Corps and the DoD as a whole kind of turned against these guys, trying to make a PR save for the military out in Afghanistan. They were turned into the scapegoat, and they were basically charged with murder and all these other things going on. And that happens because you have these conventional infantry officers that didn't have a very strong like for the special operations side. And so there's like, not our problem, get rid of them. And because they want to conserve their ability to still operate in the area.
From a business perspective, would it not be easier for the Marine Corps just to go, hey, this guy wants to go over and be a SEAL. Let's just make sure he gets to MARSOC quickly and give him the opportunity there?
Again, that's the Marine Corps looking out for the individual as opposed to the Marine Corps as a whole. I was assigned to the Marine Corps as a communication officer. That was going to be my job, and they wanted to see that role filled. Looking out for my best interests just makes more turmoil for them, because now they need to backfill this billet or acknowledge that, there's going to be one that, granted, I could have left it at 5 years anyway. I was already at 4. So it's not like it's throwing a huge wrench in the system, but they have their planning and their statistics that they're going to have this many officers leave every year, so they can expect this number of retention. So they need to plan to bring on this many new officers every year. And so it really doesn't do them any good to help someone like me to do that. Fortunately, I actually had a very good experience. I've heard some guys trying to go from infantry to MARSOC, so still within the Marine Corps, and their battalion commanders and senior leaders basically ostracize them, chastise them, told them they're turning their back on the Marine Corps, all kinds of just terrible stuff. They were given bad fit reps just for wanting to pursue something that was interesting to them. Fortunately for me, I didn't have that experience. I was actually pretty well supported by a lot of the senior officers in my unit. They wrote me letters of recommendation. They helped me get it all done. And then when I was in that transfer process, as I said, they didn't deploy me because they wanted to make sure I was ready to transfer over as soon as I could.
So what year did you transfer over to the Navy?
2012.
And straight into BUDS?
Mm-hmm.
And coming out of that, make it through the first time?
No. I got what they call SIPE. My first Hell Week is swimmer-induced pulmonary edema. There's all kinds of pulmonary edema. So pulmonary edema is when you start getting fluid in your lungs. There's high altitude pulmonary edema that Mount Everest people will get for being at altitude too long. There's a couple others, but SIPE, there's a very limited number of people that get it, so it's very difficult for them to understand. It's basically a couple triathletes get it sometimes from just overtraining, and then people going through BUDS. They're like, we kind of understand the circumstances that tend to lead to it, but we can't say this will definitively give it to you, or these people are more susceptible to it. They're like, basically, the winter classes have a higher number of people with SIPE because it's colder, the water's colder, but it's something about the water temperature, the stress level. Your body starts pushing fluid from your blood back into your lungs. Instead of just taking oxygen from your lungs and putting it in the bloodstream, it starts pushing fluid the opposite direction, and you start filling up with a pinkish frothy liquid that you end up coughing up. And
sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's great. You feel like you're doing wind sprints at altitude, even though you're literally at sea level. So I unfortunately got that the first time, and it was a summer Hell Week. It was I started, I think it was July that I got it, and then I rolled and went immediately into the next class. I'm like, I'm not going to sit around waiting to quote unquote heal. I'm just put me in the next class. I'm fine to go. So I got rolled out of Hell Week on Wednesday.
Silly question. What is the recovery for that?
Honestly, it's actually pretty quick because it's not like there's any tearing or bleeding or anything that really needs to heal. It's just your body reabsorbs. You warm up, you get some sleep, you take a hot shower, and your body will slowly reabsorb that fluid back into itself. And there's no scar tissue in the lungs or anything, as long as you don't let it get too severe.
So if I'm understanding correctly, it's just literally stepping off the line for, we'll use the term, to take a breath.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, BUDS is moving so quickly, they don't have the ability to let you step off the line to take that breath.
Yeah. So Hell Week, as chaotic as it seems, is a very structured and organized process. Every evolution has a timeline. They know what evolution is going, what time, what day, for how long, which instructors are going to be working it. everything is very organized. It's just mayhem for the students because we don't know what's going to be going on next. And one of the other things is they have hard cutoffs. So if you have to go to medical or whatever, you're pulled out of training for a cumulative of like 2 to 4 hours. I don't remember exactly what it is. They'll roll you. You haven't done enough of the training to get a satisfactory rating, so they'll roll you out. And I was about 3 hours into, they pulled me off the training. They had me in medical. They're giving me the, I forget what they're called, ebulizer or something.
Nebulizer.
Nebulizer. There you go. Yeah. And they
basically a breathing treatment.
Yep. They do that. And then, every like 30 minutes, they'd put me on a bike and they'd be testing my blood oxygen saturation. And I'd be at like 98, 99%. And then as soon as I started biking, it would just back down to 80s. And so they kept testing me every 20, 30 minutes. And it just hit a point where they're like, sorry, you've hit a cutoff. You can't continue anymore. So that was Wednesday sometime. And I was starting BUD/S orientation on Monday. So
for the next class.
For the next class. Normally there's a week gap, but for some reason with the timing of the classes, it was just like, nope, starting Monday. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to sit around and wait another 2 months for the next class. I was like, just put me back in.
Successful the second time through?
Second time all the way through.
And where'd you get assigned out of that?
Team 7, which West Coast team.
And at that point in time, so you're now probably 8 years into your military career?
No, not that far.
Or 6 years.
So that was 2014. I ended up going because they put me to language school for a few months after as well. So it was very beginning of 2014. So it was 6 years in, just shy of 6 years.
At that point in time, are you thinking you're going to do a career?
Probably, yeah. I mean, at that point, my goal was, get some deployments in, maybe screen for SEAL Team 6, see if that goes, maybe go to STVs, SEAL delivery vehicles. There's a lot of options that you can do with your career. But yeah, it was like, let's see where this can go. I definitely have 2 platoon rotations I have to do. You have to do your AOIC, your assistant officer in charge, and then your OIC tour. And then from there, you can start making some decisions.
And when was it, because you ended up getting out in what year?
2020.
When was it that the switch started coming on or the bulb started getting brighter, like maybe a career is not what I want to do?
It was when I went out to Korea. So had a great experience out there. I served for 2 years as the special operations liaison for the commander of all naval forces in Korea. I was on his staff, coordinated with the Korean SEALs. It was actually the first year was really dynamic time. Obama had previously talked about the pivot to Asia. Trump had come in and started making some moves of refocusing onto Asia. And right when I got out there, Kim Jong-un started launching the missiles. I think there was like 14 missile launches or something within the first 8 months I was out there. And everyone was coming out there. Like FBI was coming out there. The CIA was coming out there. All the tier 1, the SEAL Team 6 and Delta guys, they were starting to take a look out there because like, we don't know what's going on. There's a lot of stuff happening. We haven't really paid attention to the Korea problem for a long time. And all of a sudden it's flaring up again.
We've been a little busy in the desert.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden I'm one of like 5 SEALs. I don't think it's about like 4 SEALs that are permanently stationed in Korea. And so I had all kinds of people asking me questions. I had 6 months of lead up time relative to them. And so it was really cool getting to interact with a lot of these 3-letter agencies, working directly with the admirals and generals. I was working for the Navy admiral, but I was also liaising with the SOCOM or the Special Operations Command Korea general. And so it was a cool experience for a lieutenant to have all these people asking questions and wanting to help support them. But after the Olympics, and they had at that point they'd already had Trump met with KJU. They had the Olympics where they kind of smoothed things over because the Olympics that year were in Korea, and so they wanted to have a peaceful celebration of sports and stuff. After the Olympics, it just went quiet, and the job satisfaction out there went down. I still had a great time hanging out with the Korean SEALs. I had great relationships with them. But as far as seeing what the upper echelon officer's role was, it didn't excite me. And so I was no longer really operational as a SEAL at that point. The platoon time had already passed. And so I was seeing what these commanders and captains and admirals and generals were doing. And it was like, this isn't what I want. I don't want to try and force this just to eke out a 20-year career and get a retirement. I'm not doing this for the money, especially for 50% of what my pay would be. It's not worth it for me. I've always been someone that wants to be doing something I enjoy. And the last probably 6 months out in Korea, I'm like, this isn't for me anymore. It's not for me anymore. This isn't the same level of excitement that I signed up for. There's a lot of other options out there in the world. Let's start exploring what possibilities are there.
So this may be a rhetorical question and probably answering it as I'm asking it, but had it stayed more kinetic and more active, you think you would have kept your interest longer?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I signed up for, to be out there running and gunning with the guys, but that really wasn't an option anymore. And so, yeah, it seemed like a pretty clear answer to me. And I had also just gotten married. I want to spend time with her. We'd already spent a lot of time apart, and it's like, I'm at the 12. I would have been at the 12-year point when I started doing the math of getting back to San Diego, doing one more year. It'll be just shy of the 12-year point. I'm like, that's a good decision point. Everyone's like, oh, you're over halfway. Yeah. Tell someone halfway through a marathon, oh, you're over halfway there.
Yeah,
like
you're at 14 miles.
There's still a long way to go. And honestly, it's probably the worst half because on the military side, all the fun, exciting stuff happens at your junior level for the officers. The latter half, it turns into a lot more of staff work and command leadership stuff. And so it's a very different second half of the career. They're not equal throughout.
Once you started kind of thinking, all right, this whole career path, I'm changing I'm going to pivot.
Mm-hmm.
What did you start putting plans in place, or was it merely like, okay, I'm done, I'm going to get out and then I'll figure it out afterwards?
No, because I was coming from Korea, I didn't want to get out from overseas. I'd seen a couple guys separate from the military from over there, and it's a huge pain because all the support stuff and all the processes are stateside, and so typically what happens is these guys do all this stuff and they have like 30 days when they get back home to do all the medical and checkout stuff. And they're pretty much just thrust into society without a whole lot of transition. It's tough to do job hunting from overseas. If you're having to move, it's tough to search for a house, all the medical stuff to get your disability. It just really compresses all of that and it adds a lot of stress. I'm like, all right, I know I want to get back to the U.S. to PCS back there. I have to do at least a year. So I'm like, cool. I'll take year-long orders at Group 1, which is like the command element for all West Coast SEAL teams. Nobody really asked for that, so I knew that if I asked for it, they'd happily send me there, and it guarantees me San Diego, where I had a house. So I'm like, it'll allow me to get to a good foundational level. It'll give me a year to start planning my exit. And the job won't be terribly difficult. I'm not deploying. It's a staff job, and I'll be able to, whether I go to school or go through a transition program, job search and all that, I'll be able to do that from relative ease.
Was your wife originally from California area, or? No,
she's from New York, and I met her on a training trip out in Hawaii. She'd moved out there as a school teacher and wanted to be surfing. She's like, New York weather's terrible. So yeah, I met her out there, convinced her that Korea is just like Hawaii. Come on out for a little bit. She lived
famous last words.
She lived with me out there for about a year. Genuinely enjoyed it. She did some surfing. It was cold. There's not many waves, but it's a novelty. When is she going to get to do that again? And then coming back to San Diego, she kind of sees this place as home.
And so you make it back to the States. You're in San Diego. You do your final year. What kind of preparation were you doing personally for your transition?
I was told about the Honor Foundation pretty early on, getting back to Group 1, and they put me in touch with them. I did the interview. They accepted me in as a SEAL, so I didn't have to pay anything for it, which is really nice. And that program is essentially an executive leadership career coach transition type thing. There's twice a week for 3 months, and then they do a couple career treks. Like we went up to San Francisco. We got to meet with Intuit and PayPal, Cruise, I think
the non-driver or the vehicle, the driverless
GM.
Vehicle program.
Yeah, I think GM owns Cruise, so it's their driverless program, and a few others. And so they love the idea of having special operations guys, whether it's the actual operators or the support guys. Meet with them, so they open up their doors for us. We get some pretty cool behind the scenes tours. A lot of them are super excited to have us. Like the CEO of PayPal, the cohort previous to mine, spoke at their graduation, and he's like, anybody that wants a job from this class at PayPal, there's a job for you. And so that type of stuff is nice, and it's very helpful, especially for guys that are like, I need to find something. I need to, whether it's the forever job, I want to get something and start figuring out what it is I like and what I don't like, and course correct from there. But it's a lot of stress for guys figuring out what it is they're going to do next.
And we're going to get to the fact that you actually today have your own consulting company, but was that what you were thinking at that point, or were you thinking just going into a corporate job?
Yeah, the latter. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that nothing was going to be the same level of excitement and meaning as being a SEAL. So I started working through a lot of that mental clarity stuff pretty early on. Like I'm not trying to replace that. For a little while, I was actually looking at the FBI. So I was going to be like, I can go FBI and then become HRT and have that similar type dynamic job again. And the more I started to think about it, this is just trying to find a replacement for the thing I already did. And so I'm probably going to have some, not grudge, but it's just not going to be the same because I was already doing this, and now this is a second best option that I can kind of keep doing. So I didn't want to just keep chasing it for the sake of chasing it. So plus that's back in Quantico. I'm like, I don't need to go back there. I don't need to make Kristen live there. She's lived the East Coast, and she's like, I have no desire to go back there. So if you don't have to do that job, I'd prefer not to. And then the other side is that the FBI wasn't going to be able to guarantee me any location. So they could have literally sent me anywhere in the country. I'm like, I just don't need to do that anymore. I like it here in San Diego. I love my house. I have a great friend group here. We've got a great support network. I don't need to end up in some random location that I have zero connections to just to try and apply for this job potentially down the road. So I pushed that aside. I was like, all right, I'm going to start focusing on what's going to be right for me that'll give me the freedom to do the other things that I enjoy. So spending time with Kristen, going surfing, traveling. We just started getting into jiu-jitsu. As I said, she does it as well. Being able to work out. I didn't want to have to ask permission to go on vacation or to take a day off. That whole idea, like I did that in the military. They owned me pretty substantially. I'm like, I don't want to do that now. So I want to find something that pays me well enough that I don't have to stress money, but I'm not trying to make 8 figures, 7 figures, something like that, where I just wanted to live happily and comfortably and do the things that I enjoyed. So I started looking at some startups on the operations side, because it seemed like a pretty seamless transition to go operations in the military to operations in a company. I'm mistaken. They're very different. But I also figured out that that's not really the path I want. Like, I don't want to be doing more spreadsheets and project management and managing groups of people to keep on with timelines. I'd done enough of that in the military. I wanted to have a clean break and do something more unique and more me focused. And I stumbled upon recruiting, and not the military recruiting, but recruiting for companies. And as the more I talked to them, it seemed like that was going to be a great fit for me, because it can be pretty lucrative. It's a sales job, but you can definitely do very well in it. You just get to talk with people all day. If you're organized, you can hold the conversation. You have a little bit of give a fuck. You just put in effort and make things happen. And you can do that without someone supervising you. Recruiting is a great option, especially on the outside recruiting side, where you're not working for like Google trying to hire more people. You're the company that other businesses hire to help them do their recruiting needs. And I met a couple guys that started a recruiting agency up in LA. They said that I can work with them, and I got out February 29th of 2020, which if you do your math was 14 days before COVID started shutting things down. So it was
You're a great planner.
Oh, God, I graduated right into the 2008 economic recession, left the military 2 weeks before COVID shut everything down. It's just like my universe is trying to test me constantly. Like, you're not going to have it easy.
I just want to go back real quick because one thing you said that I think is really important. Coming out, you said you looked at the FBI thinking, oh, it gives me the opportunity to get to HRT, which is still that 100-mile-an-hour team, just different environment. But what you said was really important was, and I think that's where a lot of men and women struggle, is they want to replace what they had when they were still a first responder or they were still in the military. But the key thing is if that's not really what's driving you anymore, you're never going to replace it when you leave. Where do you think that inner wokeness, I'll use, from your perspective, did you find making that decision easy, or was it something like, I really don't want to give this up?
It took me a while to figure out. Like I was most of the way through the FBI interview process. I'd done the physical tests. They flew me out to Chicago because once a month they'll do these in-person interviews, and everyone in the country that is applying for the FBI at that month, those fly you out to some super nice hotel in downtown Chicago. Stayed the night there, did the interview in the morning, and flew home. I did the second interview with a field agent at the San Diego office. I don't remember which one was first, but I did 2 interviews. I did the PFT, and I had the entire application submitted. I did the written tests, and I was thinking about it one day, and I was like, this is not really what I want, especially once I start thinking about, all right, I could get the San Diego office, which would be great because then I can stay there. But what happens if I get LA or San Francisco or somewhere?
Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah, or Omaha, Nebraska, and in these other spots. All right. So I have to do 2 years as a field agent first before I can apply for HRT. And then I go out to Quantico. And then there's still the chance that, I don't make it through HRT, whatever reason I get hurt. They don't like my personality, because for HRT is very different than BUDS. BUDS is a lot of in your face yelling, immediate feedback on what you're doing is either right or wrong. From what I understand with HRT, I have a friend who's going through the process right now. They don't say anything. They have a clipboard. They're watching you do your evolution. They keep a stone face, and they're just like, yep, okay. They give zero feedback, and so you don't know if you're doing anything right, if you're doing something wrong, how well you're doing, if you're on the cusp of failing, if they like you, if they don't like you. And so it's one of those things that just gets in people's heads. And I've heard of plenty of SEALs that had great careers in the Navy, and they got out and wanted to go HRT, and they didn't make it. And so there's no guarantee that just because you were a SEAL, you'll make it into HRT. And then even if you do, now you're in Quantico, which I've lived there before. It's not bad, but it's not really where I wanted to be. So I'm having all these things line up of, why am I doing this? What am I trying to do? Am I trying to get back to combat because I miss it? Am I trying to have a job that I can have that, for lack of a better word, brag about? I could say, oh yeah, I was a SEAL, now I'm HRT, I'm a cool guy. Why am I going down this path? And it took some introspection to figure out, like, this isn't really what I want. I want to actually have some time and just enjoy life. Since I was 19 years old, I'd been under the thumb of the Navy, essentially. And so I was like, why don't I try and do something different for a little bit? I can still apply to the FBI with an age waiver. I think I had it until 40. And so I was getting out 2020. So I was 35. Like, I have 5 years to make a decision to reapply to the FBI if I want. Let's go do something else for a little bit and see how that is. So I called them up and let them know that I wasn't going to be moving forward with the process anymore.
Well, one of the things too to think about for somebody contemplating it, coming from military special operations to law enforcement special operations, HRT, yes, they're both special operations teams, but their mission sets are not the same. Yeah, there's skill sets that cross over. CQB, moving through a building, weapons training, that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, their mission sets are 180 degrees polar opposites.
Yeah. One, you're expected to be going out killing people. The other, if you're killing people, you're doing something very, not necessarily wrong, but there's going to be a lot of questions asked about why you're doing it. Because, one is operating against American citizens. Yeah. For the most part, like there is HRT that gets attached to tier 1 units on certain things. But yeah, largely you're working against American citizens.
And now pivoting off that, talking about the recruiting company that you found in LA, did you meet them through the Honor Foundation, or was that through your own legwork?
No, that's through one of the networking events with the Honor Foundation.
And so was that your first official job?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I did that. They originally rescinded my offer because COVID happened. Things started shutting down. They're like, we don't know what's going to be going on. We don't want to have you start and then have to fire you immediately because, businesses aren't going to be hiring for whatever reason. So I was like, I get it. No worries. I can start searching for something else. And it was like 2 weeks later, they called me back and said, things seem like they're stabilizing a little bit. We're just working from home. So it's great because I was already going to be doing 2 or 3 days a week from home. Now they're just like, yep, just work permanently from home, which was a great, COVID honestly was a great situation for me. It made it so I worked remotely. It taught me to figure out what it is I enjoy. My wife and I both work at home. And so we had to figure out that dynamic. And it was, I got COVID 2 or 3 times. Fortunately, nothing was terrible. So outside of that, it was a very interesting period in my life to be able to figure out what it is I want to do and things that I genuinely enjoy. Like we got to travel. I was working from home. I'd never understood that concept before. Like in the military, there's no work from home. You're either in the office, or you're off training, you're deploying.
For this particular company, did they have a niche market that they were recruiting for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was working with tech companies and life science companies, mostly startups. So in the early stage startup phase, Series A through seed round through Series B usually. Before they're able to really afford having their own talent acquisition team and HR functions. It's much better for us to work with them than the large companies. We had some clients like Kaizen and Novartis and stuff like that, but oftentimes the roles you're getting, because they have a dedicated staff to recruiting, the roles you're getting are either difficult to fill or they're so swamped trying to do hiring that you're probably not going to get a lot of feedback from them. And so those types of roles are much more difficult to handle. So I preferred working with the startups.
For somebody thinking they want to make their transition and want to look down the pipe of being a recruiter, what you described it as almost kind of like a sales job, but what other skill sets would you say to bring to the table, or what other advice would you give to somebody about doing that job?
It's sales, it's HR, it's a little bit of adult therapy because you're dealing with a lot of egos. You're helping people go from one job to another. You're putting a dollar value or a dollar number on their value as a person, essentially, not wholly as a person, but their professional experience. There's titles involved. There's other compensation stuff, and so there's a lot of that back and forth. So there's negotiation skills. There's working with egos. You need to be organized because you're scheduling calls, you're making interviews, you're following up, you're taking notes on all these things. You're not playing both sides. You're working with both sides. You have the candidate and the client you're working with. You're essentially being the middleman. The most analogous comparison would be a realtor, except in recruiting, there's not 2 recruiters on both sides. There's a hiring manager and the recruiter. But with real estate, you have the buyer and the seller, and the realtor doesn't have any real advantages over any other realtor. They all have access to the MLS. There's no real inside knowledge with it. It all comes down to how hard you work, what your network is, how organized you are, how professional and willing to help people out. Do you know your industry well? Are you able to give them the ins and outs? But if you have 2 senior or 2 junior realtors, they really don't have any competitive advantage over another. So it just comes down to how well you can network and grow your own client base. And that's really what recruiting is. There's no college degree to being a recruiter. It's just a lot of it comes down to personality type of, you want to engage with people, you want to have conversations, you're organized. You don't need to have someone constantly telling you what to do that day, and following through with all these obligations.
From the opposite side of it, though, for somebody who's about to transition out and maybe they don't want to put the legwork into finding their own job, is there a benefit to just reaching out to a recruiter and saying, hey, find a job for me?
Yes and no. So the way recruiting works is we get paid through the company that hires us. We don't get paid from the candidate being placed. There's some recruiters that, they'll take a fee from a candidate and help place them someplace. But that's not the norm of the business model. So with recruiters, yes, you can reach out to them and you can ask them if they have something that fits their background. But largely what they're going to be doing is they'll get a new client that'll have an open role, and they'll start doing searches for that role. They'll look for the skill sets, the experience, the location, so they don't have to necessarily move them. A whole bunch of things that they'll look for. So it doesn't hurt to reach out to them and be like, do you have anything that would meet my background? But don't expect, because you talk to a recruiter, they're going to go out and find you a job now. It'd be much better to just ask, do you have anything that fits these types of things I'm trying to do? If not, don't expect them to go out of their way to find something, because
they're not ultimately working for you.
Yeah, they're not working for you. It's not going to, the return on that time investment isn't going to be there, because there's no thing to put you in. They'd have to get a whole new client essentially before they can place you. But they can still teach you, especially if you have a good relation with them. They can teach you, how to make your resume look good, things you can do to reach out to hiring managers, and different little tricks of the trade to help you become more successful in your job search.
When was your decision to then venture off and create your own company?
At the end of that year. So I've been a recruiter for about 10 months, just knowledgeable enough to be dangerous. And it was a perfect storm of a few different things. It was when I got COVID the first time. It was right over Christmas time. My wife and I went to a cookie exchange for her group of friends, and one person brought COVID, and like 8 of us got COVID. The exact
Here's my cookies.
Yeah. The exact thing everyone was saying not to do. Don't have any gatherings because you'll have this super spreader events. Yeah, well, we did that. And our wedding anniversary is over New Year's. So I knocked out Christmas, New Year's. We were planning a ski trip to Jackson Hole. We already had everything paid for and planned out. We didn't do that. And so we're just chilling at home, recovering, because I got sick first, and then she got sick a couple days later. And so we were staggered in how long things were going on. And my company had their commission structure based off of the calendar year. So at the end of the calendar year, your commission resets, and so all the tiered level for your commission will go back to the base level. And I had just closed out all the pending jobs I had. So I was like, I'm going to be going into the new year with a reset commission, with no candidates in the pipeline, and right, it's pretty much this. So I had no candidates in the pipeline and a reset commission structure. I'm like, so I can either continue working for them, getting the baseline of 25% for a placement, or I can work for myself and either work the same amount, making 4 times as much, or work a quarter of the amount of time, making the same amount. Theoretically, obviously there's going to be some other things in there, but recruiting, much like being a realtor, has a very low barrier to entry. You don't need to have any licenses. You don't need to have a physical location. I don't need to have a product made or anything like that. Literally all I needed was an email, and you can even get away with not having LinkedIn Recruiter, but having some software to help do your search. And so for about $8,000 a year, you can pretty much have everything you need to be a recruiter and be fully functional. So there's very low barrier to entry and very low overhead. I can just start my own recruiting agency and use my network to bring on new clients, and start doing placements that way. And so I made the decision. I talked to my wife. I told her what I had going on. She's like, I don't know. You let me know. You're the one that knows your industry if you think you can do it. In the span of a week, I quit. Got a free Gmail website or a free Gmail email account. I went on PowerPoint and Google and created a logo. I got my LinkedIn recruiter seat and was using Excel as my CRM to manage my clients and candidates. So super baseline, but like I didn't even have a website. I think I also made a LinkedIn business page, but that was free. And so I was like, I got these things. I'm open for business. Let's make this happen. And that's
they're going to start rolling in.
Yeah. And honestly, it went decently well. Being essentially an independent contractor at that point, just a company of one, it was just me, making things happen. And it was a super fun, exciting way to get into entrepreneurship.
And the name of the company? Come on, marketing.
Yeah. So that's the other thing is,
or has it changed multiple times?
No, that one I've kept. So I went with Flintlock Solutions. Every team guy getting out started Trident this and Trident that. I'm like, I'm not going to make Trident staffing or something. And so I took a different aspect of the Navy SEAL Trident logo. It's an eagle, an anchor, a Trident, and then a Flintlock pistol. So I named it Flintlock Solutions and made a cool logo with a Flintlock pistol and just wrote Flintlock Solutions beneath it on PowerPoint. I took that image, and it was also a Google stock image, so it was free, but I couldn't actually copyright it. I'm like, well, ultimately I'll have to find a new logo, but for right now it seems fine. And so, yeah, I just put it all together to make it happen. I didn't really think about long-term repercussions of having a pistol on my logo for
that'll have no blowback at all.
Life science company, yeah. But I also actually really enjoyed it. I did have a couple clients that were like, hey, I think it's kind of weird that you have a gun as your logo and you work in the life sciences. Like, well, I mean, yes, it is a gun if you want to be super obtuse about it. But I mean, there's a history and a story behind it. And honestly, if you're someone that's going to be offended about a pistol and a logo, we're probably not going to get along great, and you're just going to be more trouble than you're worth as a client. That's one of the things I learned pretty quickly early on is...
You understand you came to the company called Flintlock Solutions.
Yes, it was not some obscure thing that you stumbled into. But I realized pretty early on through this that you're able to pick and choose your clients. You don't have to work with everybody that is wanting to pay you money for your services. You can say, we might not be the most compatible. Maybe someone else would be better suited for serving your needs. You don't have to be a dick about it, but you figure out that there's certain people that take up a ton of your time. I think it's Parada's rule, not a law, which also known as the 80-20 law, that 20% of people are going to take up 80% of your time. And it's 80-20 with all kinds of things. 20% of your clients will bring in 80% of your revenue. 20% of your clients will take up 80% of your time. And so you learn that you can actually cull through your client list, and the ones that are taking up the most of your time, look to see how much money they're actually bringing in. And if their revenue is super low, just cut them off. Like if they're taking up all your time and they're not bringing in much revenue, there's very little reason for you to have them on your books, because that frees up so much more time for you to work with other people that you're going to be more compatible with. Try and find the people that are the 20% of your, 80% of your revenue. And, hopefully they're only 20% of your time. And so you learn these things. It's probably the scariest thing as an entrepreneur is saying, we're not going to work with you anymore. I appreciate you paying me money before, but thank you. It seems terrifying. You're like, I'm telling someone I don't want their money.
But you hit the nail on the head though. It's the money you're getting in has to justify the amount of time that you're putting out.
And the mental drain. Like if you're just constantly drained working with somebody that is just a pain to work with, they're always having issues, or they're wanting more, or not easy to work with. It's just draining to have that. It's like being in a bad relationship. People are just exhausted all the time. And then they're out of the relationship. Like, I have so much energy.
Why do I feel better?
Yeah.
Did you, along the lines of the first company though, that you went to work for, did you target a specific niche market that you were going to recruit for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I stuck with that same market because I'd built a good network in that area. The thing with recruiting is I can recruit for construction, for life science, for tech, for teachers and lawyers. It's the same process in terms of how you reach out to people, setting these things up, getting clients on board. The distinguisher is learning the jargon and understanding the nuances of people's skills. So being able to have a conversation with a candidate about what the company's doing, what skill sets they'll need, is their background applicable? Otherwise, anybody can do what some of these high churn recruiting agencies do, where it's like, all right, here's the job description, here's the requirements. We'll just go through and match 1-to-1. They have a bachelor's degree. They have 5 years experience. They have this skill set. Cool. Send them over. But they never talk to them. They don't know if the price point's right. They don't understand the nuances of some of those skill sets. Like maybe, they're a computer science person, but they're not using that right coding language. If you don't know coding languages, then you're not going to know what that person's looking for. So it really comes down to just understanding that field and being able to speak intelligently with both the clients and the candidates.
You've been able to grow your company now. It's multiple or several employees. Mm-hmm. As far as the legwork, because you're still in essence doing sales, you're just now going out and seeking your own clients to represent. Mm-hmm. What's that process like? Obviously, if you've got specific secrets for your company, don't give those out. But for somebody thinking about wanting to get into this, what's that process like in reaching out to a potential client?
Yeah, so that was another reason why I was looking to leave, because the last company, I was already finding my own client. They were a small recruiting agent. There was like 12 people there. And I was put on the newly formed life science team. And so I think we had one client when I first joined. So my priority was, all right, we need to get more clients. We have more roles to search for. And so I started off already bringing on my own clients and placing my own candidates. They didn't have great social media presence. So I was doing a lot of my own marketing on LinkedIn. I was negotiating my own contracts with the clients. Like, I don't really understand what I'm getting as a benefit for giving 75% of my commission. And I wasn't getting any leads for them. So it's like, it just doesn't make sense to stay with you guys. I appreciate all you've done with teaching me about recruiting, but this doesn't seem like a fair match anymore. So I'm just going to kindly.
So you were already basically running your own company just under their banner as opposed to yours.
Yeah. So they did some of the back end stuff. Like they had payroll, they had legal people on retain, and they had some administrative stuff that they could do for me, but it wasn't a lot. Like it was all things that I could figure out on my own. And so when I started doing this, I was just starting doing the same thing all over again, reaching out to clients, getting roles, finding candidates for those roles and placing them. But with finding clients, it really comes down to presenting yourself in a way to help them. Like anything else in business, you don't want to say, this is the service that I do, or this is the thing that I make, because nobody cares what you do. They care what you can do for them. So present it in a way of, I can solve this problem, or I can fill this need that you have that's unmet. And so framing it in a way that they understand, by bringing me on, yes, it costs money in the short term, but what are you losing in the long run by doing this yourself? Recruiting is a very time-intensive process, and I always compare it to painting your house. Anybody can go paint their house. They can go to Home Depot, they can get the paint and all the supplies and stuff, but the supplies cost money. You're probably going to use them that one time and never use them again, so there's not a lot of return on that investment. You haven't done it before or very much, so you're not going to be very good at it. It's going to take you a long time, and it's not going to look as good as a professional. So you can do it all yourself, or you can pay someone to do it. It gets done much faster. It looks better. It's cheaper for them because they do it multiple times every day or every month. And so they get more use out of the tools they have for it. And then the biggest one that I talk about with people is, because I work with a lot of early stage companies, I'm typically working with like the CEOs and the founding team who, they're trying to fundraise, they're trying to run a company, they're trying to create whatever it is their company does, whether it's a product or some kind of technology. If you're spending all this time writing job descriptions and reading through resumes and having conversations with people that aren't qualified, that's all time that you're not able to focus on running your actual business. I can take that off your hands and give you a ton of white space back to actually run your company.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's basic good business.
Mm-hmm.
Let me take this piece off your plate. It costs you X, whatever X is, but look how much greater your return is than you trying to task somebody else on your team to do this, who now is not going to get other work done.
Yep.
So you're selling them on the fact of this is actually, as odd as it sounds, I'm saving you money.
Yeah. I mean, their time is valuable too. Like as a CEO, how much is your time worth? $200, $300, $400, $1,000 an hour. If you're spending 20 hours on this job search, that's a significant amount of money that you're losing right there. And you're not getting back, and now you're falling behind your other priorities.
And you've got a second business. Is it all under the same umbrella where you're helping veterans start their own business, or is that a separate company you've started?
Right now it's under the same LLC just for logistical purposes because I just started it, but it will eventually be split on its own. But I started Vetrepreneur Collective because so I've been running my recruiting agency now for about 2.5 years. And I've run the gambit of success and failures, and I've lost money. I've made a bunch of money. I've had struggles. I've had wins. The biggest thing I learned was that going from 0 employees to 1 employee is probably the hardest thing any entrepreneur will do. Because me as a recruiter, I knew how I spoke to clients. I knew how to get clients. I knew how to find candidates. I knew how to work with the candidates and how to write these emails and all the functions that go into running my business. If I'm not having another recruiter on the team, I need to have consistency in my service. So I need to take all that information from my head and put it into a format that they can easily understand and operate off of, isolated from me. I don't want to be there over their shoulder every single day saying, all right, you should do this. Don't do it that way. Do it this way. So creating a standard operating procedures, training, and all the things so that they can be successful independent of me.
Which you learn nothing of in the military.
Nothing. Never once done that. There's definitely no succession plan in the military. And so, yeah, taking all that information and putting it into a format that they can use and be successful was extremely challenging because you're constantly thinking or doing things that you don't realize you have a strong skill set, and you just tell someone to do it. They're like, I don't know how to do that. Oh. So learning to document the rule of thumb I use is if you've done it more than 3 times and there's more than 3 steps to it, you should document it. And the earlier you start documenting these processes, the easier it will be to scale your company. And so through all these little lessons and things I figured out along the way, I had several colleagues and friends from the military asking how I started my business, how they could start theirs, if I had advice for them. And so I was making a bunch of these guides and helpful hints for people. I'm like, well, if my 3,600 followers on LinkedIn are asking these types of questions, there's got to be a larger amount. Because at the time I had a very small, 3,600 is a pretty small number of people, and I was still getting a good amount of questions on how to start a business. Like there's got to be more demand out there for the veteran community to want to be entrepreneurs. You constantly hear about how veterans are burnt out working in the corporate workforce. They feel like a line item on an Excel spreadsheet. They don't feel valued. They feel like the company tries to own them. They have to ask for permission to go to their son's baseball game on a Saturday because they're expected to be at this meeting. And so they're just like, why am I putting myself through this with a company that when bad times will hit, they'll lay me off? Like Facebook, I think, just laid off another 12,000 people. Google has been laying people off. Like it doesn't matter what company you're working for. All of them are susceptible to the whims of the market, and a lot of them expand too quickly and without really giving thought to what's going to happen if there's a slight downturn in the revenue coming in. And so these guys are just hung out to dry. And there's a lot of people that would be interested in entrepreneurship, but they just don't know where to start. And so what I've been able to do is create a guideline for creating a business plan and a checklist for starting a business, going through everything of starting an LLC or an S Corp or C Corp, what's the difference between them, how to set up your bank accounts. I'm a big fan of Profit First and following his financial models. If you haven't read it and you want to be an entrepreneur, I definitely recommend Mike Michalowicz's book, Profit First. Talking about the legal stuff, how to set up your contracts with a partner, with an employee, with a contractor, with a client. If you need leases, how to set up your budgeting forecasts. Hey, if you have this much money in the bank and it's going to give you this much runway based off of this is your lease, this is your utilities, this is your payroll, this is how much it costs to build your widgets and get them shipped. You have this many months, so you need to be revenue producing before then and actually profitable so you can keep returning these things. Having these types of documentation and or documents to help you through that make becoming an entrepreneur much simpler than if you're just going to try and figure it out on your own like I did. Fortunately for me, recruiting is a very simple and, as I mentioned, low overhead cost. So it's very easy to get involved with that type of stuff. Consulting, coaching, recruiting, they're all very good avenues for people to learn about entrepreneurship. You can just do it as a little side hustle. While you're still working your day job, you can learn about how to file for a federal tax EIN and pay yourself through a payroll company and set up an LLC. So you have all this stuff going and you can take these baby steps as opposed to being like, all right, I'm going to open a construction company. I've never run a company before and had employees and had to pay for insurance and all that stuff, but let's make it happen.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, there's a reason why 1 in 10 startups fail is because people go in with that attitude of like, oh, I've been in construction for 10 years. I know everything I need to. Well, the problem is owning a construction company is not being a contractor. You're now a business operator who knows contracting skills. And so I think that's where most people struggle and they get in over their head so quickly is they need to detach themselves from the thing that they did to becoming a business owner and having other people do that technical skill.
For the veterans who want to work with you, do they need to come to you with a solid idea of what their company is, or will you work with them to try to ferret out their ideas of where they could take an entrepreneurship route?
Yeah, I've done both. So I've worked with people that it was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I don't know what. And so I have a couple exercises I work through with them to figure out, what skills they have, what things they enjoy, what they can get paid to do. Or, if they have a basic idea of, I want to start this type of company, but I haven't done anything, all the way through guys that are fully running their companies and they need to figure out how to scale better.
What's your opinion as far as somebody going into business with a partner?
Partners are the same, if not more challenging than a spouse. So if you wouldn't want to get married to that person, obviously outside of the sexual relationship side, but if you don't feel confident and have enough trust in that person that you would want to get married to them, do not go into a partnership with them because it's legally the same thing. They are now owners of the same company you have, and to separate yourselves from that, you have to go through a legal process, or you have to buy them out, or they have to buy you out, and it can turn very nasty very quickly. Because especially if it's like a 2-partner company, you each own 50%. First off, I would always suggest one person own 51%, so that there's always a decision maker. So if you guys get to a standstill, someone can still make a decision. It doesn't have to be this democracy situation.
That's going to be a good test right there for whether or not a company is going to work, because is the partnership going to allow one person to be 51 and one part of the partnership be 49? You
have to. I can't think of any other way of that working, because no matter how good of friends or how well you guys think you work together, once money gets on the line and livelihoods are in jeopardy, people do weird stuff and people's personalities come out different. Unless you've been through stressful, challenging situations with this person before, like, yeah, maybe you guys were both SEAL platoon mates and you've been through combat together. You've seen how each other's reactions are in stressful environments and you can read and react with one another. That's very different than, oh yeah, we've been good friends for 20 years. but your interactions have pretty much been going to the bars and going on vacations and stuff together. Like there hasn't been any challenge to how you guys think and work through situations. And you also have to understand that people have different visions for what the company could and should be. You know, you might think the company should go this direction, and he might think the company should go another direction, and now you're at an impasse. So how do you solve that decision when you have to make one? You can't do both. So having conflict management things in place, understanding who's in charge and who's going to take a back seat. You know, you can still have very equal roles within the company, but there has to be someone that can make a final decision.
There's no way for you to be able to predict every potential possible business opportunity, but for those veterans that you've already worked with who have wanted to go down the entrepreneurship role, are there business ideas or business ventures that you've already seen, hey, you may want to stay away from this? Because I've dealt with a couple instances, or I've seen a couple instances where they might sound good on paper, but they're just going to fail.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's like, don't go into this field, other than maybe Bitcoin.
FTX. FTX is going great.
I mean, who knows? Crypto might come back, but I would say it's more situation. Like I was talking to one guy, he's getting out of the military and he wants to start a company. He just likes the idea of being able to work for himself. And his the first idea that he presented to me was owning a indoor shooting range, because he noticed there wasn't one where he was located in on the Panhandle area. He's stationed in Pensacola. And so I started walking through what that would entail. You know, is there an existing facility? Would you have to build another facility? With something like that, you're going to have to get it certified, because, you know, even if you're in an industrial area, you can't have bullets going through the walls into other areas. So you have to get the building certified. So you have to put all this capital up front. Either you're building a building from scratch, or you're renting a building, but you have to rent or buy. But you have to get approval if you're renting it to do all this massive construction. You have to have licenses, because if you have guns, there's going to be FFL related stuff to be able to sell and handle firearms. And the majority of gun ranges I've seen, their revenue stream isn't so much from the shooting range. It pays for some of it, but a lot of the revenue comes in from retail. So having the ammo and the weapons there, and retail is extremely expensive to get into for a brick and mortar facility, because you have to have the products on hand. So you have to buy that, pay the money up front, and then hope that you sell it. And so there's just all kinds of money, upfront capital that you need. And then, having a gun range, you can't operate it yourself. So you have to have employees. So you now have payroll and insurance and workers' comp, and all the upfront capital. I'm like, this is a huge endeavor to get into for someone that has never run a business before. And so as you start talking through these things, people are like, oh, I didn't think about that. And that's why entrepreneurship is so difficult, because there's so many different things that you need to consider. And that's why I walk people through the business plan development process at the beginning. It's like, before you put a dime into anything, let's figure out how you're going to be making money, who your customers are, how you're going to be reaching out to them, what your value is, what your value proposition is, how that's different from any of their competitors in the area. And then, what the key resources and actions and vendors and partnerships that you're going to need to be successful. And just by going through, you can do, just like any 5-paragraph order, you can do an expedited planning process and be done in 45 minutes, or you can do a weeks-long, months-long, in-depth market analysis and SWOT analysis, and go talk to competitors and talk to potential customers and really get detailed information. The business plan is going to be, it's only going to be as good as the effort you put into it. But by taking the time to do it, you'll get a really good understanding of what it's going to take to be successful and all the moving parts that you're going to have to go through to make it happen.
I think that was the answer I was looking for when I asked the question. It's not the idea that's probably the problem. It's the not looking at the big logistics picture. Mm-hmm. So you come to the table and you go, hey, I want to do this, but there isn't the back end thought process of there's all this that you need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
That goes along with it.
Yeah. And that's the value that I bring. You know, a lot of the stuff of building a business plan, figuring out what things you need to do to start a company, you can find those on your own online. You know, I figured them all out over a couple of years. The value that I provide is having the experience to know which questions to ask, to make sure you have an understanding of what you're getting into and what you're going to have to do to be successful, and also have that expectation management. You know, so many people see being an entrepreneur like a startup. You know, everyone sees the romanticized version of a startup, of becoming a unicorn and selling the company and making tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. What they don't see is the 95% of all the companies that failed and burnt out on the side of the road for that one company to make it. Entrepreneurship is very similar. You know, we're not necessarily looking at those huge payouts. The goal is to have a profitable, functioning business that will be able to operate largely independently of you. You don't have to be working in the company all day. You can work on the company, you know, managing the long-term vision, doing the administrative stuff, and letting the employees do the day-to-day task. Both are very important. You can't have one without the other. It's not like as the business owner, you're just sitting up in your office, not doing much with your feet up on the desk. You know, you're taking all the risk. You put the financial and mental effort in at the beginning to make this environment where the employees can be successful. Without your idea, without your vision and your financial input at the beginning, they would have never had this environment. So they're both needed. It's just who's carrying more risk. The business owner took on the risk at the beginning, and so they'll be able to reap more of the reward in the long run, where the employees are having very little risk because they can quit and go leave and somebody else have, and they don't have any financial ties to that. And so it just comes down to, you know, what you're comfortable and what you're able to manage as an individual. Some people don't want to have that burden of other people's livelihoods being on their conscience. They don't want to take on that risk. They have a family with young kids. They don't want to risk any of that. So it takes the right type of person to be an entrepreneur, but it can be a very lucrative and fun environment for people to work.
And I would imagine equally important, though, is just because you come to the table with the idea, just because you come to the table and start the company, you can't necessarily rely on employees to run it. You've got to be able to step in when needed and make sure that company can keep going. I'll use the example like you talked about a construction company. Just because you know how to swing a hammer doesn't necessarily mean you know how to frame a house or whatever. Mm-hmm. And if you can't step in when an employee who says, you know what, I don't feel like going to work today, that task still has to be completed. Yeah. And so I think for the little bit of experience I've had, I've seen people who they want to start a company, but they don't want to work the company. Yeah. Yeah. You have to be able to do both. And there's another thing I was just talking about recently with somebody. It's better for you to grow through all the phases of the company. So I was talking with Hazard Lee last week. He's the F-35 pilot who just recently wrote a book, The Art of Decision Making, I think. But he has like 440 million views on YouTube. He's created a huge YouTube following, basically giving people an inside view of what it's like to be a fighter pilot. And he started this all from scratch. Like he filmed his own videos and did all the production and put them on YouTube and did the podcast and stuff. And so he taught himself how to film the videos and how to edit the videos and how to get them posted on YouTube and use social media to draw attention to it and all those little things. He now has a team of super capable people, like former Red Bull people and other stuff like that. But he was able to find them because he knew that job first. He wasn't like a 10 out of 10 perfect person at it, but he knew enough to know what to ask and how to check to see if this person is actually capable of doing what they say they are. A lot of people will inflate their skills because they want to get a job. So being able to understand the functions of the role before you bring someone else in to replace you is huge to make sure that you have
the right people coming in who are gonna be able to take on that role.
When you start working with somebody who wants to create their own business, I'm assuming there's also your input and evaluation on them as a potential leader and a potential boss. Do you have those difficult, crucial conversations with someone and like, you might want to work on your leadership skills?
I haven't had to do a lot of that right now with are you talking about with entrepreneurs or people in my company?
The people who want to be entrepreneurs and start their own company, is that also a component that you kind of evaluate them in your dealings with them and see how they would be as a leader?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tell them that just because you're good at this skill doesn't mean, like we were talking about, just because you can swing a hammer doesn't mean you can frame a house. Just because you have a little bit of knowledge in an area doesn't mean that you should necessarily get into running a business, because running a business is very different. As I talked about earlier, you're running the business, you're not doing the thing. And so the skill sets aren't necessarily compatible, but I think it's like 80% of people that start companies started out as that technical doer. Like me as a recruiter, I'm like, I can do this better myself and I'm going to go do it. But at a certain point, if you're going to actually scale, you have to step out from the working in the business role to work on the business, to make sure that all the functions and the processes and the systems are in place to make the business successful. That becomes your role. Right now with recruiting, I do very little of actual candidate outreach. My focus is on running the business and bringing on new clients to make sure that there's enough roles for the recruiters to work on. A lot of them don't have the desire or the ability to bring on clients. They don't want to do that sales side, because working with the candidates is easy. You're offering them service to get them a job, and it costs them nothing. So right. It's a very compatible relationship, where on the client management side, you need to convince them that your services are worth the money that it's going to cost. And some people just don't want to deal with that stuff. And so that's where I've been able to do well. I enjoy it much more than the candidate outreach side. I'm happy to do both when necessary. But I allow the recruiters to focus on that area, and that gives them more opportunity to make placements, which gets them more money. So by not stepping in to do that, it teaches them, if I'm constantly stepping in to do the candidate stuff, then they're never going to learn. But it also would be taken away from potential income that they would have.
And it goes back to basic leadership of, give your people the task and then give them the confidence that they can complete the task. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely got to be hard, like you alluded to earlier, where the hardest part about starting your own company is hiring that first employee, because now you're taking a business model, you're taking something that you've created, and you're hoping that person is going to represent the company as well or as you would. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely that jagged edge that you're walking. You've got to give them the trust to succeed, but also understand that you also have to give them the trust that could potentially fail your company's reputation.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to make sure you have enough training and processes in place so that they don't have to be the creative innovators. It's great to have creative innovators, but that they can work through problems. But the problem is, with most businesses, whether you're providing a service or a product, people want consistency. And so to give them the same thing over and over again, you want to make it as easy for the people on your team to know exactly what they need to do every single time. And if you're putting them in a situation where they need to be innovators and creative to come up with solutions, it's taking away a huge amount of their time, and it's now very difficult to replicate. So if from the recruiting side, if I don't teach them how to do message outreach and then do a candidate intake and then work with the hiring managers and get the interviews scheduled, if they're having to figure that out every single time, I need to now hire higher end level recruiters that have done this before, which comes at a higher price point. And every one of them is going to do things a little differently. So it's going to be very difficult to replicate it. And so if the hiring manager is working with one recruiter one day and then another recruiter another, their formatting might be different. How they schedule meetings might be different. One's going to be using Teams. One's going to be using Zoom. And so it gets very confusing for the client to manage. But if I tell them, all right, this is how you send the message. This is the template I'd like you to use. This is how you do the intake, and this is how I want the summary to be written up. This is how you schedule the interviews, and this is how I want the message to look, and you're going to use Zoom. I can now take someone that's never done recruiting before, put them in the seat, train them, and now they're going to do things the same way every single time. And for me as a business owner, I don't need to have the exceptional top level people every time. I can now find people and train them to do it myself, because it gets very difficult to hire your own people if you're constantly having to have the top person. Some companies need to have a couple of those to be the innovators, but everyone else underneath them just needs to be able to follow the process. And that's how a company is going to ultimately be successful.
You mentioned a book previously, and I apologize, I've already forgotten the name of it, that you enjoyed reading. Do you have
the first one?
That's it. Do you have a kind of an unofficial list of 2 or 3 books that you recommend for your entrepreneurs to start reading?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of them is Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. Phenomenal book. He's actually really entertaining to listen to. It's not like listening to Ben Stein talk, give an economics forum. He was he was a former sales guy and entrepreneur, very entertaining. I think he was like a college athlete. He just went through some very difficult financial struggles with the company, and he had this epiphany on how to better manage the finances. So that book. The E-Myth Revisited. I don't remember the guy's name. I think it's Gerber, Michael Gerber, maybe. It's a little bit dated because he's talking more like physical location. The book, so the E-Myth is entrepreneur myth, not like
e-commerce.
Yeah, e-commerce stuff. And that's where I was referencing the 80% of entrepreneurs are doers who say, I can do this better on my own. And the way he formats the book is he follows a baker that he is essentially being as a consultant with, getting her business scaled and making it better. And so all these different phases and different situations. So he'll have like a situation, more of like a business review type thing. And then he'll have the real world story that kind of ties in with it and it follows through. But it talks about how entrepreneurs need to build in these functions, build consistency, and start working on the business instead of in it. You know, if you're just turning yourself into another employee within your company, you're not doing yourself any favors. Like you can go get a job and have much less stress than doing it this way. So the whole idea is to build a company that you can hire people to do a lot of the day-to-day stuff, and then you can manage the company. And that's when you actually become the entrepreneur. Otherwise, you're just an employee of your own company, making yourself miserable. Big fan of Infinite Game by Simon Sinek and Start With Why, another Simon Sinek book. Infinite Game I really like because so many people focus on, I need to be better than my competitor. I need to be number one. I need to beat these guys. I need to have a better product and to have a better service. And it's all very subjective on what these things are. The analogy he uses a lot is Apple and Microsoft, and how Microsoft was this big established company, and he would go to their quarterly or annual business review things, and everything was about how are we going to beat Apple in this thing? How do we become the number one company? How do we beat the competitors? Where Apple was focused on why they're doing it and just being the best, because the goal is to just remain in the game. So there's finite games and infinite games. Finite games are, a football game, a baseball game. There's established rules. You know who the opponents are. There's a finite amount of time, whether you play innings or time, and the game ends at a certain point. Infinite games, you don't know who the other players are. There are no rules. There is no time limit. And the whole point of the game is to remain in the game. The analogy he uses is Vietnam War. We went into it with a finite game. We want to beat the enemy, reach these objectives, and all these other things, where the Vietnamese were looking at it as an infinite game. Their goal is to survive. And so their whole point is to just stay in the game. They'll do everything they can to stay in the game. And so whenever you have an infinite player versus a finite player, the infinite player will almost always win because their goal is to just keep going. And so with business, there's so many people that just want to be number one and get so focused on that, where really with a business, it's on how to stay in the game and build a cohesive purpose of why you're there, because that'll outlast anything. Is anybody can be number one in some notional category they come up with. Like, are you number one because of sales? Is it sales this quarter, this year, this decade? There's all kinds of things you can do to essentially cherry pick those standards.
Not to go super analytical, but going all the way back to you going through buds, and you could kind of put it in the same terminology. Does somebody come into buds saying, I just want to be a finite player in the sense of, I just want to get through SEAL training, or do I want to be an infinite player? I want to be a SEAL,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
100%.
and having that mindset of where's your stopping point.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was my viewpoint the whole time. Is I knew that buds wasn't what SEALs do. This is just something you went through. I had it in my head. I was so curious to know what a SEAL actually does after they're done, that I was like, I just want to get through this so I can actually see what's out there. I want to be able to lift up the skirt and see what's behind it.
This is one, you know, like playing baseball. This is just getting to first base.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a home run.
Yeah.
Any last pieces of advice for veterans making their transition?
Go into it with a very open mind and don't have fixed expectations. There's a lot of guys that are like, you know, I need to be doing this. I need to be making this much money. I want to be doing this type of role. And a lot of times you don't actually know what you don't know. And so figuring out what it is you don't like is just as important as figuring out what it is you do like, because you're able to keep narrowing your focus on what is. And just because you find something now that you like doesn't mean you have to stay there forever. In the military, they kind of beat into, hey, you get shitty orders, stick it out. You're here for 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it is. Maybe your orders on the next end will be better. In the civilian side, if you're not happy with your job, just leave. There's nothing, you're not proving to anything or to anybody that you're tough because you stuck it out at a company that you hate what you're doing. You don't like the people. You don't like the product, whatever it is. You're like, why am I showing up every day? You don't need to have that mental anguish resting over you. Find something else. There's so many other jobs out there. And if you get to the point where like, I want to start my own company, talk to me. I'm happy to chat about what goes into that, how you can get started. My biggest suggestion is to have income coming in and starting a side business. And then once you reach a certain revenue point, you can transfer over completely. Going in headlong without any other options and any other revenue stream, it can be done. I mean, I did it with mine.
It'll be super easy.
Yeah, you'll never have any issues. But it creates a lot of stress, especially if you have a family. I was just married at the time and she was working, so it was able to balance itself out a little bit. But yeah, if you have, you know, a wife who doesn't work and or a spouse who doesn't work and kids that are reliant on this single breadwinner, and you're going to go all in on a business, you know, maybe that risk approach isn't the smartest. But you can build like a coaching or a consulting firm on the side, or building some kind of publication like newsletters and stuff like that. You can monetize a lot of those pretty quickly and figure out if entrepreneurship is even right for you.
Last order of business. What's your website for your company?
Oh yeah. So vetrepreneurcollective.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Kevin Seiff, Seiff. And so I'm on LinkedIn for myself and for my company. And then Vetrepreneur Collective is the website that has some of the products, and you can sign up for my newsletter, the Monday Morning Vetrepreneur, where every week I'll put out a featured veteran and their business, and also give an entrepreneurial tip on how to get your business scaled or started.
And I'll put the books you recommended and all those links in the show notes. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.